Hi and welcome to today's lesson. Today we are going to take a look at some different linking devices or linking expressions or connectors that you might use in your writing especially. There's no reason not to use them in speaking as well. But today we're focused on using these in writing for the first certificate exam. Let's take a look, shall we? Okay, so first let's have a look at what's included in today's lesson. We are going to see some linking expressions that show contrast, and we'll look at some example sentences and also a translation in Spanish. So if you are a Spanish speaker, that might be helpful. This includes while, however, although, even though, despite, or despite the fact that, we'll look at the difference in a moment, and nevertheless, and a couple of others. And we were looking at how to use these in your part 1, that's the essay part of first certificate writing. But let's start with a little exercise to get you thinking about this. Imagine that in the first exam you've been asked to write an essay about the need for public libraries. Are they still necessary these days? So you're going to plan your essay, of course, because you're good students and that's what you do. And in your planning, you make a couple of notes, points against public libraries and points in favour of public libraries. Against public libraries, you might think of something like this. You can find almost anything you need to know online and much faster than you can find it in books. Whereas in favour of public libraries, maybe you would think of not everyone has internet access at home, so some people use the library to go online. It's all very good to have lots of information online, but not everyone accesses the internet from their house. Okay, so how many different ways do you know to combine these two ideas, showing the contrast between them? I'll give you my example and then we'll have a little pause and you can think of your own examples. How about this? Even though you can find almost anything you need to know online, not everyone has internet access at home. So you're showing on the one hand an argument against public libraries, right? You can find almost anything you need to know on the internet. And then you're contrasting that with an argument that goes in the opposite direction, that's in favour of maintaining public libraries. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to think of different ways, similar to mine, of combining these two contrasting arguments. You can pause the video if you want while you think of that. Okay, if you've had a chance to think about some different possibilities, you can leave your answers in the comments, or if you're an online student of mine, you can leave your answers in the discussion forum. I'll open a little discussion thread, especially for this. Here are some different possible answers you might have thought of. My original example with even though you can find almost anything, etc. You could also use, in a very similar way, although. How about this? While it is true that you can find almost anything you need to know online, not everyone has internet access at home. Despite the fact that you can find almost anything you need to know, etc. A few more examples would be, you can find almost anything you need to know online. However, not everyone has internet access at home. Notice the structure's a little different. Here we have what we might call point A, then a full stop, new sentence, however, comma, point B. It's a slightly different structure. And using this same structure, we could use nevertheless. Now, I thought of a couple of other possibilities of how we could connect these two ideas, but we need to make a little manipulation to the sentence. We need to change the structure of these a little to do it. What about something like this? Younger people and families are likely to have a computer with internet access at home. whereas older people might have to visit the library to go online. It's a way of showing the contrast between these two different situations, between younger people and families and older people. Or something like this: younger people and families are likely to have a computer with internet access at home, full stop. On the other hand, comma, older people might have to visit the library to go online. I think it's worth, as we look at these different expressions for showing contrast, I think it's worth taking the time to write down how you would say these things in your own language. I know that translation is a little bit out of fashion with language teachers in general. I use translation as a learner and sometimes as a teacher as well. You have to be careful when you translate, because sometimes the meaning might be the same, but the way that a word is used might be different. There might be some details in what sounds more idiomatic or what's more typical. But to understand new terms, especially things like connectors, linkers, and adverbs, I think it's often very useful to know how to say these in your own language. You can always take a bit of time to look these up in the dictionary as well, although there's no substitute for experience with the language and for reading as much as you can in English and listening to as much English as you can. A lot of my students are Spanish speakers, so I'll go through how to say these in Spanish, but you could complete this table with the equivalents of these terms in your own language if you're not a Spanish speaker. But here are my ideas of how we say these in Spanish. You'll notice that some of these linking expressions, linking devices, might be followed by a noun, whereas some might be followed by a complete clause or a sentence or a verb phrase. We have to pay attention to what follows these connectors. So for example, although it was raining, we went to the beach. In green here, the "it was raining" is a complete clause, the subject and the predicate. That's the same for even though. It follows exactly the same structure. So then we might think, what about this? What about despite it was raining? Can we do that? No, we can't. Despite works in a different way. Usually we use despite with a noun phrase. So we could say in this case, despite the rain, we went to the beach. Despite likes to be followed by a noun. We could also say, in spite of the rain, which has exactly the same meaning. And if we really want to use our verb phrase or our clause, "it was raining," we would have to add something else. We would say, despite the fact that it was raining, or in spite of the fact that it was raining. Here's another little exercise for you to finish off. I want you to imagine that in the first certificate exam, you've been asked to write an essay about priorities when choosing a job. Is it more important to make a lot of money or to enjoy your work? And I've taken this, I've paraphrased it slightly, but I've taken it from a book of past exam papers. This is a real question from a real paper. So you're going to plan your essay like good students, and you're going to make some notes. You have to find contrasting points. So let's make some notes in favour of the argument that money is more important, and on the other hand, that enjoyment of your job is more important. You might come up with something like this. On the money side, we have other ways to enjoy life, such as sport, music, culture, friends and family. The point of working is to earn money. And the enjoyment side, let's say, if we have to spend 40 hours a week doing something until we're 65 years old, it should be something that we like. Now, you will have your own opinion on this, but for the moment, that doesn't matter. Remember, in the first certificate, essay writing, you're going to save your opinions for the conclusion. First, you have to weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of each argument. So I want you, as a little exercise to finish the lesson, to try to combine these ideas using the linking expressions that we've studied. Your even though, however, nevertheless, etc. And you can leave your answers in the comments of the video or in the discussion forum if you are one of my online students. Okay, and that's all for today. I will see you all in the next lesson.